Sports Day in the D. John out here with you. It is September 4th, 2017. Upcoming on today's show, we have college football recap between Michigan and Michigan State's games, Madden 18, a pay-to-play topic, and we're going to talk about the NBA 2K18 Prelude and let you know how to get it. So to kick off today's show, I want to start with Michigan, as number 11 Michigan took on number 17 Florida in Texas on Saturday afternoon. Michigan won the game 33-17, and there were a few takeaways to take from this first opener of 2017. And what do you want to make of this game, and what do you want to talk about? Because you have 10 Florida Gators suspended in the opener against Michigan. So Michigan winning 33-17, that's nice, getting a win over a ranked team, but with 10 players suspended, including running back Jordan Scarlett and wide receiver Antonio Callaway, kind of makes you wonder how much that win is going to actually be worth. But let's talk about a little bit what happened in the game and get your thoughts on it. Facebook.com/ToBeAGunslinger, Twitter @JohnReinott. So Florida opened the scoring, and this is one of these things that I'll even talk about in the Madden topic that we'll have coming up a little bit later. But Florida opened the scoring with a 46-yard field goal bomb from Eddie Pinheiro, and it was quite amazing to see because this guy really had one hell of a leg. And it really seems to me, especially if you think about it from the other perspective, you're playing any football video games, which we'll talk about later, kicking is really difficult to do. But for some of these college guys, it certainly seems like they have a hell of an easier job than you would in the actual game itself. So after it was 3-0 after the long field goal in the first series for Michigan, you can really get to see what Bolton Spate looks like. And between Bolton Spate and John O'Corn, that's pretty much what you're going to have between these two guys. So for any Michigan fans, really you want to see whether or not there's going to be a two-system quarterback style going on for, I don't know, maybe 7 weeks, or if you're going to set on having a starter. The interesting thing with Bolton Spate is he only didn't start, he only missed starting one game. He started every other game for Michigan last year. So he still seems like the front runner, but John O'Corn did get some time in this game. So in the opening drive, it looked like Bolton Spate had a touchdown, but it was called back with the confusion between the referees and the players and an ineligible receiver. And before the game even got underway, like before that 3-0 field goal, there was a targeting that was going to be sent on one of the Michigan linebackers but was negated. But there was also another targeting that was negated later in the game on Florida's side. So it was a little bit sloppy at the beginning of the game, but the momentum in the second quarter is where there were some questions for me to lie. And it's just, maybe this isn't something I should go too in-depth on, considering, I covered some of the stuff at the Oakland Press with some of these kids. I know they're college kids, but I want to talk about one player in particular in Jim Harbaugh's squad, and Grant Perry really quick. Because Grant Perry from Brother Rice, he had some issues that you already probably heard about off the field with the sexual misconduct and all of that. So he's already going to be under tight wraps, I would think, under Jim Harbaugh. And then there was after a big 3rd and 7 conversion from Bolton Spate after a nice pass play, Perry just decides to spin the ball like a flat top and get a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty. And to me, I was thinking, oh boy, because after all that stuff, talking about pleading guilty to 1 count of resisting a police officer, a felony with a maximum sentence of 2 years in prison, he also pleaded guilty to 1 misdemeanor count of assault and battery. But in exchange, the prosecutors dropped the 2 counts of misdemeanor 4th-degree criminal sexual conduct and an alcohol charge. So if he's doing all that stuff already on the field, and I get it, it's just the first game. It was a big play. He was probably a little hyped up. You got to think that Jim Harbaugh, especially at halftime when Michigan really took over in the second half, you got to believe that he talked to him a little bit about that stuff, because it certainly seemed like Michigan had a little bit of momentum, especially in the second half. But before we got to that, here's where I talk about momentum. Because immediately after that penalty, and I'm not saying it's all Perry's fault, but it's interesting in the way that this works. Bolton Spate got into a little bit of a trouble, and I'm talking interception trouble, and it didn't look too good because Bolton Spate got picked off on a 3rd down by Duke Dawson. He took a 48-yard interception return to the house and scored. Bolton Spate, for the night, he was 11 for 25. He wasn't that sharp. 181 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. But then immediately after that was an overthrown ball. So the first pick got batted up in the air. maybe it wasn't all Golden State's fault, but it got taken to the house. The second pick, it was just totally underthrown, and all of a sudden it was 17-10 Florida. After 2 picks and seemingly not having any yards at all in the game, Florida had a 17-10 edge at the half. So after the 2 picks, you had John O'Korn in at quarterback, and it made you wonder whether or not it was because of the 2 picks. Jim Harbaugh was saying he was going to use a 2-system quarterback anyway. He put John O'Korn in there, and he only got the 1 series or whatever, but the punt was blocked going in the 4th, and that didn't look too good. And the Michigan special teams, in the sense of it, I heard Joe Tessitore talk about it too, was that for punting, there wasn't a lot of experience on Michigan's side. In fact, they didn't have any other kickers go out there maybe kick more than once in terms of having punting all set up. So that's going to be a big question mark as we go forward. But the field goal kicking, I thought, looked pretty good, because there was a kid, let me get his name in here. I got it in there. Quinn Norton. He hit a 55-yard field goal for Michigan in the game, and he also hit another pretty far distance one, but he missed a couple from the 30-yard range. So he seems to have quite a leg, and so does the other guy from Florida and Eddie Pinero that we already talked about. They have quite the leg. But we'll see if whether or not the accuracy is going to stem. But it should be a pretty good spot for field goal kicking, just whether or not the punt is going to work out too well for Michigan. So the Wolverines, throughout the game, and especially in the second half, they were able to convert a couple of long third downs from the running, which I like, the trifecta of Ty Isaac, Chris Evans, and Karan Higdon. So Ty Isaac had 11 rushes for 114 yards, Chris Evans 22 rushes, 78 yards, and Higdon 7 for 28 and a touchdown. So as I mentioned earlier, with the 10 Gators suspended, it really took a toll on the Gators in the second half, as it was all Michigan. They scored 23 unanswered points to end the game. The running game, as we mentioned, turned out to be effective. It seemed like the Gators were tired out quite a bit, which it was understandable. Like we said, whether or not you put a lot of weight into this, it's still number 11 Michigan and number 17 Florida. It's nice to see Michigan go out there and make a statement, but how much of was the statement really with 10 players suspended? But still, like we mentioned, the running game got everybody tired out. It was 215 rushing yards for the Wolverines to just 17 for the Gators. And it was interesting to see, because Florida had used a 2-system quarterback as well, try to get everything set up in Felipe Franks and Malik Zaire, and that didn't seem to work out too well, as both of those guys had fumbled twice at the quarterback position for the Gators. And like we mentioned, it's easy to point out, and I don't know how much you want to look into this, but the 33-17 score and the second half, which was just, or the second quarter, which was just 2 picks in there from Walton State. How much do you want to take out of a game like this, and whether or not you think it was actually domination on Michigan's side, or was it just because of the 10 Gators suspended? Because when you think about it, the total yards didn't look too good for Michigan. In fact, it was a whole hell of a lot to a whole hell of a lot of nothing on both sides, and Michigan was just able to take the game. So what I liked from what I saw on Florida's side especially was C.C. Jefferson and defensive lineman David Reese. David Reese had 11 tackles and a tackle for loss for Florida. And for Michigan, they're going to want to get some help, let's say, from their leaders. And Tarek Black, he had a pretty good long touchdown reception from Walton State. I liked what Devin Bush was, and thankfully he didn't get called for the targeting on the first play of the game. He had 7 tackles, 3 for loss, and 2 sacks. And Maurice Hurst helped the Michigan Wolverines to a team total of 6 sacks on Florida. So it looked pretty good on that end for Michigan. But again, how much do you take away from it, and what did you think of it? Facebook.com/ShabuGunslinger, Twitter @JohnRyanOut. For Florida, the quarterback, we said, Malik Zaire and Felipe Franks had 2 fumbles apiece. Spade started all but 1 game last year for the Wolverines, and I'm thinking that's going to stay the same, but I wonder how much John O'Korn is going to be able to go in there for Michigan, because I want to talk about this a little bit too before we cut into Michigan State. As Michigan goes on to their next game, they're going to be playing Cincinnati at the Big House. It's going to be a noon start. they're going to have about 5 or 6 weeks where they're not going to be playing any big boys. So basically, from the takeaway of that 33-17 win against Florida, what I think of it is you're going to really get a chance to test out Walton Spate and John O'Corn and see what you have. And what I would think within these 5 or 6 weeks before you end up playing State, and granted, we're not sure how good State is, but that's going to be when they play State in about 6 weeks, that you would get the Walton Spate and John O'Corn situation figured out. I mean, I guess I would say I wouldn't mind between 4 and 5 weeks before that game against State that you try to figure out some things and you figure out who is going to be the starter and what you want to do. That does make sense to me, but I would think if Michigan's ultimately going to be successful, Spate's going to have to grab the bull by the horns and lead Michigan to where they want to go. Granted, they're not as good as they were last year, but that's probably the best thing for Michigan to do is figure out what they're going to do between these two quarterbacks for the next maybe 4 to 5 weeks and then settle on one, because they're going to, at the end of the season, they're going to be playing number 6 Penn State, they're going to be playing Wisconsin, they're going to be playing number 2 Ohio State. They're going to have Wisconsin and Ohio State at the end of the season in the final 2 games, and that's going to be a difficult task. So if there's any meandering as far as your quarterback is concerned at that time, Michigan probably won't be very successful on that front. So what do you guys think? Facebook.com/TWGunslinger, Twitter @JohnRyanOut. I want to transition a little bit into the Spartans. I'm not going to say I watched the entire game against Bowling Green, but I did catch most of the highlights and I had a few takeaways from Michigan State Spartans' 35-10 win over the Bowling Green Falcons. And it was the opener at East Lansing, and there was a few takeaways in here for me, especially if you didn't catch this moment or I caught it on the ESPN stream. It was a heartwarming moment for Tyson Smith, the 19-year-old. He suffered a stroke last year, and he lost his grandmother in that same year. And for him to be able to even, battle through all that stuff, get back into the football field, be able to make an impact, but not just say make an impact, but even actually be able to get on the football field, walk again, do some of these other things, that's a heartwarming story for him to be able to actually do that. And quite better, which was the reception from his teammates when he recorded an INT for a score. So that was a highlight of the moment for Michigan State, and it was quite nice to see because everybody came up there and congratulated him. Now, for Michigan State, you have 51 true freshmen or redshirt freshmen. So you have quite the hell of a young team. So at the beginning of the game, especially in the first quarter, there was a couple of Spartan turnovers, and I was surprised to see it from senior leader L.J. Scott, running back, and then the center as well. But Lewerke looked pretty good for the Michigan State Spartans in quarterback. I thought that maybe there was a couple of lucky breaks for Michigan State as Bowling Green had missed a couple wide open receivers that could have been in the end zone for points. There was a fumble, like I said, that went over the head of the center where Bowling Green stuck first on a field goal. They could have had a couple other chances to score were the Falcons, but they weren't able to capitalize on Michigan State. So not everything looked great as far as the first half. You would expect some mistakes were going to be made, but still, Michigan State does go out and defeat Bowling Green 35-10, and what they do need is to get some wins under their belt and get everything settled after the tumultuous offseason and everything else that happened. It would make a lot of sense for them to just continue to rely on their senior leaders like L.J. Scott. And toward the second half, like we mentioned, he didn't have a great game in this one, but toward the second half of the season last year, he looked pretty darn good because when he started playing all these other Big Ten opponents, he really took it to Michigan. He really took it to Ohio State. He looked pretty good, and I expect that to continue as far as the season goes along for L.J. Scott. So Madre London got a 7-yard touchdown in the game. Felton Davis, the veteran leader from Michigan State, got a couple of scores from Lewerke. It was 14-3 at the half, and it was a 21-0 run third quarter, second half for the Michigan State Spartans, and that was enough to close it out. So what do you think of the games between Michigan and Michigan State? Facebook.com/TWGunslinger, Twitter @JohnRyanOut. Like you mentioned earlier, Michigan plays Cincinnati at the Big House. It's going to be Saturday at noon. State is going to play in East Lansing against Western Michigan on Big Ten Network at 3:30. If you missed it on Saturday, which I don't believe it was on any of the other ESPNs unless you're streaming it. Western Michigan opened up against number 5 USC, and this is going to be their first season without Roll the Boat PJ Fleck that went to Minnesota. And I thought they looked pretty good considering they're going against number 5 USC. They had a lead for a little while, but in the second half, USC kind of pulled away, but still, number 5 USC got a scare from the Broncos. And I expect that the Broncos are going to be really ready to play this game against Michigan State next week, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Broncos pull out the victory, but we'll end up seeing what happens. I expect that to be a good game. Maybe the Michigan-Cincinnati game is just something that you file in your back pocket, but if you want to watch something locally next week in college football, Western Michigan and Michigan State might be where it's at on Big Ten Network at 3:30. So those are just some of my college football takeaways. Next week when we end up doing a show, we're going to talk about the Lions in the first game that we end up seeing. But I got a few other topics that I wanted to hit as far as football and video games. So just stick with me for a couple minutes. I'm going to get a drink of water and stuff, and then we'll be right back. Facebook.com/StreetGunslinger, Twitter @John Reinott. This is second segment of Sports Sanity in the live show 9/4/2017, testing it out for the first time on live. Obviously, it's going to be on YouTube, and with this recorder here, going to get the stuff in on Shop Engine as well. We just talked about Michigan and Michigan State in the openers for the first two teams. I want to transition into more football news, but this is going to be a little bit more off the cuff and some of the other things that I thought about. And again, as I mentioned before, I'm not really a football guy, but I do represent the undefeated Oakland University Golden Grizzlies. But that's only because they never played a game, so that's just a joke there. So here's the thing, and let me see if I can grab this real fast. So Madden 18, Tom Brady on the cover here, in the Gold Edition. Never played Madden football before, but I decided I'm going to splurge, go all in. I think it was $80 for the Gold Edition. I don't necessarily recommend that anyone pay $80 for any kind of video game. However, if you did get the Gold Edition when it came out, you get to play it, I think, 3 or 4 days early, pick it up on a Tuesday when it was normally Friday for last week's release. You did get a chance of having one of the 5 GO players in Tom Brady, Barry Sanders, Deion Sanders, Ray Lewis, and Jerry Rice. So that was kind of cool. It set you up with a lot of other card packs, which I'm honestly, if you're going in the market and looking at some of the stuff, you did pull out quite ahead, and as long as you're playing the game, it does make sense if you want to play it early to go ahead and do that. But here's the thing where I question a lot of you, especially if you play any kind of sports games at all, is whether or not it's the age-old question, how much did the team actually add into the game this year? And that's always one of the questions that you have as far as sports games go. But I want to talk a little bit about Madden 18 and why I think, even though I don't always say a lot of good things about EA, I really don't. I'm on the record for that. I think Madden 18 is a pretty darn good football game, and I'm going to tell you why. And it's not just because I have the damn game. So if you're looking for humanity to be put into a robotic football game, you're finally going to get it because Madden, unlike FIFA last year, they had a story mode which normally they have a set script, but you're able to do a few other things to determine whether or not you're going to get the NFL, involve yourself with your friends and all that. But the long shot mode follows the story of Devin Wade and Cole Cruz. And while it's about 3 hours, you can get it done pretty much if you want to just right away, just finish it out. In the end of it, it does bring a little humanity to the football game because it's not all about what just happens on the field. It's about some of the off-the-field adversity that these guys face, whether it be, death of somebody in the family, hard circumstances, not having any money, things like that, getting recognized from a small town, trying to just make your way to an NFL squad before you get cut, on the two-a-days and all these other things like that. It's thrown in the game, and it doesn't have the telltale cutscenes like if you ever played The Walking Dead or the Batman from the Telltale games like that, where you have the choices and overlapping story. But what it does have, like you mentioned, brings a little humanity into the game, and I think that that's cool, being able to just bring a kind of story mode. Yeah, to some people it might seem throwaway because you guys just want to put in and start the season, start your online leagues and things like that. But I thought it was a really darn good addition for a game like that, and it gets a lot of something for everyone. Especially like me, I'm not the biggest football guy in the world. However, when I ended up playing Madden 18, I saw that there was quite a package in the game, and there was a lot to offer. So I think the long shot mode is pretty cool. And if you ended up completing it, especially it only takes like 3 hours, you can replay and try to get higher scores and things like that if you're a trophy whore and things like that. But you can get Dan Marino, you can get Chad Johnson, Chad Ochocinco, and then Devin Wade and Cole Cruz. After you finish that, those are the two that you play throughout the story. In the Madden Ultimate Team, there's a section where you play through their high school games, you play through college games at Texas, and then you can earn 84 overall versions of them. Somewhere I was told that they can get to 85, but I think it has something to do with the Madden Ultimate Team on the mobile device. But you still get some pretty good rewards in Dan Marino and Chad Johnson, so that's not too bad, 82 overall. So if you needed a quarterback and needed things like that, that ends up working out. Now, for Madden 18, it also runs on the Frostbite engine, which FIFA ran last year. Essentially, what that does is allows to create greater lighting and shadows and greater details on players. Now, it doesn't really seem like that big of a deal, but when the game is actually running on the new engine, and it's not just because it's the first football game I ever played, but you can definitely play when you're playing at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis against Andrew Luck, certain other stadiums like that. When the light shines in the afternoon games, it's absolutely blinding the way it goes off the helmet or goes in play. It kind of makes it hard to figure out where you're running your routes sometimes. So, but some of that stuff is actually in there from the perspective of what it would be in real life. And for a lot of that stuff is pretty cool. And what the engine just allows you to do is just to have more frames of animation, just to be able to have more lifelike detail in the things that you would actually see on a Sunday broadcast. And I don't know the names of the two play-by-play color commentary announcers for Madden. I know that they were in there last year in the 17 iteration. I think it was Brandon Gaudin and someone else, Charles Davis, I think. Brandon Gaudin and Charles Davis, I want to say. Those two guys are phenomenal. That's some of the best commentary I've ever heard up in comparisons to NBA 2K, which has, Kevin Harlan, Greg Anthony, Chris Webber. You got guys, you have Doris Burke in there, which is nice. They added Kevin Garnett and things like that for 2K, but they've always had good commentary. But the Madden commentary with those two is phenomenal. And the best part of it is if you follow along, let's say you follow along in the preseason, all right? So you get updated stats. Yes, I know it's the preseason, but you would get updated stats throughout there, and they would comment on some of the things, maybe even articles that were posted throughout all of the states and all of the teams in the NFL, and they would just mention some of the things that they see. They take little snippets between each thing, and they would get updated. I think it gets updated once a week, which is pretty cool. I noticed that some of that stuff in preseason games, which was kind of cool. But the commentary between the two is great. The long shot mode is pretty darn good for what it is. Like I said, it's just a 3-hour, maybe throwaway to some of you, but it is good for what it is, and it's quite enjoyable. So I would definitely recommend checking out Long Shot. Like I said, the presentation of the game is really good, but I want to bring a couple other things into the Madden experience here. And this isn't really a new feature to me. I'm not going to give EA all the credit in the world because I don't really play anything on Microsoft as far as the Xbox and all that stuff is going. I had a 360. That's about all I ever owned from Microsoft. Never had original Xbox. Never cared to have Xbox One or the Xbox One X now that's coming out. But on one of the previous iterations for Madden, I want to say 12, there was just team up, 3-on-3 team up. So one would control the quarterback, one would be the running back, one would be the wide receiver. And on the defensive side of the ball, you could take the linebackers, the defensive line, the corners, and things like that. So it would just get divided between the three players of what responsibilities are what, and you would choose what responsibilities you wanted before the game started. So that way you could control that specific group of players. But my problem is when EA takes some modes like the 3-on-3, and now they try to rebrandish it and think of it as a new feature in the Ultimate Team squads. It was a feature that was there about 5 years ago. So don't try to tell me that it's anything new. The caveat for the Ultimate Team squads for 18, now that it's actually back in the game for next gen, is Ultimate Team itself. And we mentioned for any of these kind of sports games, I have another problem with it, but we'll get into that in a second here, is you will take your team that you've constructed, whether it be in the marketplace, beating challenges, buying players, trading players, whatever of that sort. So you take your team and your team of 2 friends, you'll choose an offensive coach, a defensive coach, and a head coach. So your offensive coach is going to handle your quarterback responsibilities, calling plays, and everything else. Your defensive coach obviously is going to handle all of your defensive side of the players and calling plays like that, and the head coach is just the guy that brings in the uniforms and the coach and accepts penalties or not. So if you're new to the game and you want to just play and you're playing with someone else's team, that's good. Or if you're new to the game and want to play with your friends but not handle the other responsibilities on the team, head coach would be where it would be for you. And that worked out pretty good for me because I said I was new to the game. I did play a little bit of the defensive side of the ball and the quarterback as well. We'll talk about that too. But my problem that I have stems not with the Ultimate Team squads because the connection's good and it's fun and the gameplay is fun. But my problem is the pay to play. And a lot of you guys, if you know this comes from whether you're playing MOBAs, sports games, anything, any kind of game. There's always some kind of pay to play aspect. And maybe you can say facebook.com/Twitter@JohnReinhardt. Maybe you could say, this works well for me because I'm not one of those that's going to spend all the time in the world. Or you say, these people have no life and they play the game all the time. I just want to have the players. Now, I wouldn't say that. I don't get a chance to play it all the time. But when I do get a chance to play it, I enjoy playing the solo missions, getting the coins, getting the revenue, what have you, getting my own players, going through the marketplace and building my team through playing the actual game. Yeah, that's a novel concept. But what the pay-to-play does, if you choose to do it, or if you take your mom's credit card, or however else people do that, because I imagine a lot of these kids that would do that, maybe there's going to be some adults too, but a lot of the kids don't have a job. So they'll just end up getting a prepaid card or something like that, and they build their team up. And essentially, you could take $50, $100, whatever, get yourself maybe 8 or 9 elite players, between 80 to 90 overall, something like that, and just build your team up to be beast mode, like Marshawn Lynch, without ever essentially playing the game at all. And you could say, yeah, that's fine, but essentially what that ends up doing is it can balance the game for a lot of you, especially the ones that work hard, when you see these guys have 99 overall on the other side. Or they'll just trade amongst their friends cheaply after buying players so they can get what they do to essentially get a god squad within the first 3 or 4 days of the game, and that's how it's going to be. And you could say, John, that's how it always is as far as a lot of these games, and I can understand that, and I get it. Trust me, I understand that side of the coin. I get where you guys are coming from, but I would just altogether rather have it in a perfect world where if you're actually putting the effort to play, then that's the team that you're going to end up being with. And then you're going to have a competitive balance there. Yes, there are other modes to play. There's a salary cap versus a head-to-head, things like that you can do. But essentially, and I get it, I'm not naive to the prospect of this. This is put into the game because companies know that these people will buy it, and they make a lot of money off of it. And granted, I get that. And it's always going to be that way. It's not anything that I'm going to be able to do anything about. But I do think that's a problem sometimes, especially when you're putting in all the effort, all the work to try to get better, and you just get taken out by someone that runs gun monster, halfback wheels, cheese plays, have the 90 guys with the 99 speed, 99 agility going there and wipe you out. So the pay-to-play topic, whether or not you guys agree with it, Facebook.com/TBUGunslinger, Twitter @JohnRyanOtt. What do you think about the pay-to-play topic as far as the games are concerned? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Have you ever been victimized by it? Because it certainly seems to me that it's not that fun sometimes to go up against those teams like that. But like you mentioned, if you actually put in the work, I believe this. If you put in the work, I got about 80 somethings on most of the side of the ball. Have a balanced team. I don't have any crazy players, but I got them by building sets. You can exchange a few players to get other ones, different coins and things like that. Build the players up and get everything to work good for you. But just watch out sometimes if you're going to go ahead and play on one, because sometimes you're going to run into some people that just have crazy teams. But it is a lot of fun. So if you're going to run offense and defense, the head coach, like you mentioned, offense is the one that calls all the plays. Defense, you're going to control your linebackers and things like that and pick plays. And the head coach, you get to play, as anyone on the defensive side, but you get to bring in the jerseys and the coach. You don't have to do all the other play calling and experience, but you can have fun with it that way. And my experience generally throughout the game was it was fun. It's better if you play with a couple of your buddies because it's 3-on-3 rather than joining up with randoms, because some of them, as I had saw them when I'd play in a game there, is they'll pull their players intentionally back to let the other team score. They'll run into you on punt returns, so that way there's a safety or an automatic touchdown in your own end because someone takes it and runs all the way back. There's a lot of stuff like that you have to be watched for, because every online community can be toxic in any game, let's face it. But my overall experience, if you're playing it with a couple of buddies and you want to just put in the effort, there is the Ultimate Team Squads. There's a long shot story mode. The commentary is quite good. It's running on a new engine. There's a lot of solo things to do. There's a little bit for everybody in the new Madden, and I think it's a quite good game, and I encourage you guys to check it out. So I'm going to take another couple minute break here. Then when we come back in, I want to talk about NBA 2K18, my experience of it, what I think will happen with the servers, and some of the drastic changes that might be coming to the game. And that'll be the last topic of the day before we talk about the stuff going on next week. So I'll be right back. I'm going to get another drink of water and move around for a second. Sports Day and the D, John out here with you. It is September 4, 2017. We're continuing the third segment of the show opener on Facebook Live and YouTube. As mentioned, if it's not live on YouTube, this will be caught after the stream and then uploaded. And then, as I mentioned on Shout Engine, this is going to be uploaded as well. So if the audio is, I apologize, in this Logitech HD camera, tried out for $50 at Best Buy, was able to stream live and everything else like that. So hopefully everything is coming out clear. I appreciate you guys sticking around. I want to talk about the last topic of the day on this show here is NBA 2K18, and the Prelude drops tomorrow, Tuesday. And essentially, if you want to get it early, if you're in Xbox Live, PS4, any of that kind of stuff, there are ways to do that. There is people that go out there and make a fake account, set their time zone to New Zealand or something like that, so they end up getting, it's essentially tomorrow. So when you go into the store after a few hours, you can download it early, but the caveat with that is you can only play it on that account. But the 2K Prelude does drop on Tuesday, and I want to talk about my excitement level as far as the two, well, I could say NHL 18 too, but we'll just talk about the 2K18 Prelude for basketball right now as it drops on Tuesday. Now, there were a few interesting things, and this is going to be off the cuff as I'd seen some of the videos here. But if you ever played any open world games like Grand Theft Auto 5, Watch Dogs, things like that, there's a lot of those games now, and they always seem to be ever popular, especially in the RPG realm of Skyrim, things like that. I know that that's a little old, but that's one of the things that's always on my mind is how good that game is. Now, 2K is going to try to have an open world experience as far as the neighborhood, and what this is going to end up being is a GTA 5-like realm where you go into, let's say, workout place. I'm not going to say Planet Fitness or any of those things like that, but you go in there to work out, you lift weights, you do other things like that, but this time you get to choose where your boost will actually go on your My Player. That's what a lot of people actually play as the My Career, My Player, stuff like that. But on this, in this experience in the neighborhood, you actually get to choose your path to being 99 overall. You can play all of the games online, essentially. You don't have to play offline My Career mode to level up, get your guy to wherever you want, to have all the badges and things like that. You can do that in an open world experience. They actually have Foot Locker in there where you go in there and you try like all the Jordan shoes, Derrick Rose, Kyrie Irving, Kobe Bryant, things like that. You can go in there and try out all the shoes. You can go around and shoot baskets in some kind of arcade thing. There's a lot of different things that you can do in that game as far as your overall experience of it. And then when you go in through the neighborhood part of it, the My Player pickup games that are in there where it's to 21, there's all still in there with the Got Next, where hopefully someone, when you get on a spot, that someone doesn't push you off of it. So hopefully that stuff doesn't continue. But my question is, and especially I only had 2K17. I didn't really buy the game per se, but I got the $60 copy when it came out. Went to GameStop and bought it. Okay, so then in December when they had the deals for the more trade-in credit, I traded in 2K17 by December for $45, and I thought that was a hell of a deal because 2K17 was so pathetic playing the game online, and it was so broken that I just had to get rid of it. So there are some concerns of whether or not I'm going to think 2K18 is a good game and whether or not they improve upon these flaws. And these flaws that I'm talking about is the essential game-breaking flaws. The flaws where it's not just Steph Curry pulling up from 3 over half court. I get it, Steph Curry can do a lot of that. But every single player in the goddamn NBA should not be able to cross the half-court line, pop a 3, and in 2K17 get an automatic green release that goes in. You can try to contest it as much as you want, but if they have Amethyst, Difficult Shot, Hall of Fame badges, that son of a bitch is going in the back of the net. And essentially back of the whatever. That is going to happen all the time in 2K17, no matter what. And granted, if you have some bronze, if you have some silver, gold players, that will not be an issue. But for the most part, you know how all this stuff works. All these guys will have these players, and you will proceed to pull your freaking hair out. So is that going to be in 2K17? Into 2K18? Is that transition going to take place where they're going to fix it? Supposedly the shot meter is different. It's over the player's head now. There's different ways that they adjusted the shot where you can see whether or not you can test it a little bit better. So maybe that will change. But when you have elite sharpshooters like James Harden and Steph Curry and things like that, I expect shots to go in that are crazy, not from all these other players. So I have to watch on that. Now, the other disastrous part, and the reason why a lot of 2K YouTubers, you know, the Essential, the OG, Chris Smooth, you have Troy Dan now, you have Agent, Cash Nasty, all these other guys. If you follow the 2K community, especially, I encourage you to follow Chris Smooth in terms of anything about his sports games and commentary, because he just does a really good job of what he does. He always brings good content, and he's one of the originators out there. But my other issue, and a lot of them had talked about it, especially in the 2K community, was the Park After Dark feature that was in 2K17. Now, essentially what happened with this was they brought in DJs, they brought in Snoop Dogg, they brought in these other rappers, and while you were playing your pickup games online, you would listen to some of their music, some of their tracks, and some of their cuts as you were trying to play a game. Now, the issue with this, okay, is it was only available, I had maybe 3 or 4 times a year. Never actually got into it when I had the game. And it was available for a 2-hour window. So you had all these guys going within this 2-hour window trying to get this specific content that only worked 3 or 4 times a year. And the issue with it was it didn't work. There was lag. You couldn't play it. Nothing ended up working at all. So you have all these people waiting for this event, maybe trying to get home from work early, get home from school early, college, things like that. Do whatever you can. Try to join up, play a limited time event with your friends, get certain giveaways, certain level ups, and things like that. And you couldn't play the damn game. So that's the other issue I have now with this 2K18 supposed neighborhood community. You're going to have thousands and thousands and thousands of people on the screen at the same time. And how do I know this? This is in the sense of having 2K15, 16. I had those 2 games. And then into 18, which I'm definitely going to get, because there are some other experiences and things that I can talk about. But when you're playing in the park, playing the pickup games, hell, when you're playing Pro-Am games even, Pro-Am games is essentially playing an NBA game with rules. But for some strange reason, I don't know why the hell it doesn't have it, there isn't any NBA commentary. So it's got everything else. You can make your own jerseys. You play through My Player. It just doesn't have the commentary. But that's all rules. But in the park, it's park rules. There aren't a lot of 3 seconds unless all that stuff got added in. You can do whatever you want. Some of them have rules. Some of them don't. Depends on the time of day and what you want to do. So essentially, when you're in the park and you're playing with a couple of your buddies, you would find a lot of people going in the park, going onto your got next spot. So there were squad spots here, and there were got next spots here. So essentially what you wanted to do was get a team of 4 or 5, get into the squad spot so you had first dibs on a game. Now, if you went into the got next and you didn't join up with a squad, you would have to get first dibs to the ones that waited on the squad. And essentially the other issue is that you had other losers that would go in there that would press the X button or A button, whatever, on Xbox, and they would just smash the button over and over, essentially taking you off of a spot that you could have at times, especially in the other games, waited 20 minutes to stand on. So you would waste 20 minutes of your life standing on a spot, not even getting a game, just to have some loser go in there and take it from you. And the games, with all the other people that were walking around at the same time, even when you started a game. So let's say I'm in a 5-on-5, I'm in a 3-on-3 at the park. So I'm playing the game, and it's more zoomed in on the game itself when you're actually in it, but essentially you can still see and sometimes hear all the people off in the background over here, all the people in the background off over there, and you have to deal with all of that lag on top of you actually playing the game, which you could get lag from having a bad connection from yourself or someone else. You still have to deal with all the other people that are in the game that could possibly make you lag. So forgive me if I'm a little bit skeptical in the fact that this neighborhood experience is going to actually work. Am I happy that they're going to try to put some kind of GTA 5, Watch Dogs, Skyrim open world type deal into an NBA game? Yeah, I'm all for it. Yeah, it's a new idea. Yeah, it's something we've never seen before. But don't expect me to believe that all that stuff is going to actually work. And I'm not just talking about first week issues and first week patches, because if you play games and things like that, it happens a lot. You deal with things like that a lot. But after the dust is settled, and then the first 3 weeks in the month, and issues are still like that, there's going to be a freaking problem. And not to mention, there's already the issue with 2K in the previous years. It wasn't just until about 2K 15 and 16, because they've been making games since the Dreamcast launched in '99 for 2K and Visual Concepts, that anytime that there was online games, there was always issues and server crashes and things like that. It wasn't until the last 2 or 3 years, and maybe you can throw 2K17 as the exception of one of those crap connection type deals, that 2K even had good connections, not just across basketball games, but in all their sports games that they used to make in general, with the 2K All-Pro Football or NHL 2K and things like that. Not a lot of people bought the NHL game, and for good reason. It wasn't very good, but the All-Pro Football was pretty good, or NFL 2K. But, that had some lag in it, especially with 2K. There is a whole hell of a lot of lag in the other games like that, regardless of what your connection is going to be. So, with the community, I am skeptical in terms of whether or not it's going to actually work like it's supposed to. So that's going to remain to be seen. However, there is a couple caveats in a 2K which I think that's going to make it better. Not to mention, a lot of people say that playing the My Career is boring, playing it offline. Story and everything else is quite good, and I'm going to continue to say that that's going to be improvement as we go along again. That's usually one of the highlights, the commentary, the My Career, the action on the court, everything else, the way that it plays offline is absolutely fantastic. Some of the times you can play it online, it's quite good too. Just depends on what you get into. So for those of you that play that game, that want to get to level 99 as fast as possible over level 99, you don't just have to play offline anymore to do that. And even if you want to grind for badges, let's say you want to be good at hop stepping into the lane, doing the dream shake up and under like Hakeem Olajuwon, bombing threes like Steph Curry, hitting contested mid-range shots, driving to the lane, dunking on people like Vince Carter used to do back in the day with Air Canada. You can do that just like always, and the badges probably work pretty similarly. We'll have to see that when the Prelude launches tomorrow. I'll have a little bit more on that as well. But you actually get to see your significant progress of where you are and what you have left to do as far as the badges are considered. And that is quite good because it's nice to know where you stand. It's hard to have to go out there, which I did. I posted one for 2K17 when I had it. For a lot of you, hopefully some of you actually got a chance to use it. If not, that was fine too because it worked for me. But I would essentially say if you wanted to get this badge, you have to dunk 250 times on this person, or shoot 80 contested threes and make them to get deep range Jedi, or do this and this and this. Now, you're not going to have to do any of that stuff. You just get to go into the menu, look at it, you get to see exactly where you left off so you know exactly where you stand as far as the badges. That's a novel concept, but it's a great idea by 2K, and it's something that's very welcome. So changing some of the shot aspects, like I said, is very welcome. Bringing KG and Kobe Bryant into the booth. Hopefully that doesn't erase Chris Webber and Doris Burke, Steve Smith. Trying to think who else is in there. Not Brent Barry, Kevin Harlan, Greg Anthony, Clark Kellogg. Hopefully it doesn't erase all those other guys that are still in there. Hopefully it's just the additions of Kobe and KG, and I'm looking forward to that as well. I would like to see that some of their commentary and the storylines that they ask remain after one season, because if you do play a season of My Career, all the other extra content things they talk about vanish. So maybe some updated commentary like Madden would be nice. We'll see if that ends up happening. But the game, essentially, could look quite good. There's a lot of potential in it. And there is something else that I want to talk about as well, because there's also another my team aspect. Pretty much all these games have that now, where you build your own team. But for 2K18, they actually have the draft champions, or the pack and play, where you get, so you draft your team. I think it's maybe up to 10. You don't get all 12. It's 10 or 9 players, because you're going to use your maybe rotation. I think it's 10 players. So you have 5 and 5, so you got to back up 5. Essentially, what you're going to do is you're going to draft those players. You're going to take them online, and you're going to play against them, against that drafted team that you take, which is nice. And hopefully that stuff is a free entry. That remains to be seen, but that's a nice addition. And that's something that I would definitely like to play, because I like to think that I'm better than average at that game. I'm not great by any means, but I could definitely take down some players that are decent. And the ones I don't know what they're doing have no chance. I know how to play post-up game, shoot, drive to the lane, make some plays and things like that. I'm pretty comparable as far as the basketball game. Now, Madden, everybody would be kicking my ass. I understand that, so I'm not going to be playing head-to-head. But in basketball, that's quite cool. And then there's also, which I think is quite cool, the salary cap mode for the young ones. If you want to play head-to-head, you'll have playing against people where they'll have a salary cap. So if they have high-paid players like Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, things like that, it's going to cost them a lot of money, considering like real-life salary cap structure, to have them on their team. So they essentially, if they choose to do that, can't have a team of superstars. If they want to have a couple of superstars, they can, but the rest of the team is going to be scrubs. Are you going to go out there and have a good balanced squad? Or are you going to go out there and have a couple of superstars that try to lead you to victory? It makes team building and chemistry a little bit more fun, and it essentially assures you that you're not going to get overpowered. If you choose to do it, essentially it'll go down to, in theory, the player that knows how to play and utilize his team the best over the other. And I like that. That is a good inclusion for 2K. Now, there were a couple other issues that I want to talk about before we get going here. Was 2K had an issue with whether or not you win the game and the win actually counts against you. In fact, sometimes it even counted as a loss. In the 2K community, you even seen it, like I said, if you follow guys like Chris Move and Asian Cash Nasty, Troyden, and all that, they would essentially get a 2K pre-type message saying, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. I had something similar happen to me in one of the previous iterations in 16, and I got one of those messages and posted it as well. So will that stuff be fixed? Because everything else sounds great, but it'd be nice if your wins actually counted, because let's be honest here, if you get one of those high divisions, getting wins actually gives you a Michael Jordan, a Dennis Rodman, and things like that. It gives you some outstanding throwback legend players that you can only get by going 10-0 in a specific season bracket. You can't get it by losing, and it would suck to actually win the game and get counted for a loss and have to start all over to get those previous players that you should have already gotten in the first place. So that's interesting to have those two in there. It's going to be nice to actually, because I went from 2K16 to 18, that if someone follows you in 2K16, you don't have to wait for the ref to bounce the ball back to you, and you dribble it 6 times and shoot a free throw. You can press X and skip the cutscene, just like you should be able to do already in single player. And that was in 17. That was probably the only nice thing I can say about it. But it is nice going from 16, which I thought was a superior game. Maybe it was a little bit slower, to 18 in terms of the prospects. And like I said, I'm a sports fanatic, but I'm one of those guys that tries to buy the game every other year, unless it's NHL. And granted, I don't have a lot of positive experience from the next-gen versions of 15, 16, 17 for NHL, but I'm sticking in there. But for a lot of this stuff, like I mentioned with Madden, baseball, NBA 2K, try to buy everything every other year, because with these guys being on a tight cycle with these developers, you kind of wonder how much they can add into a year. And that makes a lot of sense, because it's a sports game. What are you just getting? You're getting updated rosters and a couple other things. That's why I encourage a lot of you guys, unless you're a diehard fanatic and you're going to play it all the time every year, that to get it every other year. So what I'm saying to you essentially is Tuesday, get the Prelude. Check it out for free on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. And if you never played a football game before, Madden 18 might be where it's at. I left my thoughts on it. So to close the show and talk about it, we talked about Michigan and Michigan State, their prospective wins over Florida and Bowling Green. We talked about Madden 18, the long shot mode, Ultimate Team Squads, was brought back in. Highlights of it, in my experience, and a pay-to-play topic. On today's show, we talked about the NBA 2K18 Prelude and some of the other stuff that was in there. Now, before I go, I want to mention one other thing, is I have a highlights package for week 1 on PS4 Share Factory all set to go. I'm getting the video together. I'm going to upload it shortly, whether it be later tonight or tomorrow morning. So check out the top plays from online Ultimate Team Squads with me, Nick, and Cowboys. Nick the Gamer is a guy I've pretty much played with for about 7 years. Played a lot of NHL. In fact, when I first played with him, he didn't know anything about NHL. He didn't know any of the rules or any of that stuff, and he's one of the best players I've ever played with now. We had a lot of, like I mentioned before, documented in the NHL part of it, top 3 finishes, a top 1 finish in NHL 12, which was quite nice to actually win the whole thing, and a lot of success. Now in the next gen, I think we had 7 of 10 Elite Cups. We didn't get as many wins as we wanted to, but in the playoffs we did pretty well. 17, we didn't do that great. So hopefully NHL 18 is going to be a little bit different. So like I mentioned, before I get out of here, I'm going to mention I'll upload that Madden Ultimate Team Squads Week 1 highlights next week. We end up doing the show. I'm going to do a full show, talk about Michigan State again and what's left of it, and any other sports topics. But I want to mention, too, that after a few days with the NBA 2K Prelude, if I get everything together, we'll do a quick little live recap to see if any of you guys played the Prelude and give me your thoughts on it. Facebook.com/TBGunslinger, Twitter @JohnRyanOut. So look for the Ultimate Team Squads upload. We'll talk about 2K Prelude in a few days, and we'll get a full show next week again with Michigan and Michigan State. So happy Labor Day, everybody. I'm glad that this was about an hour. That's what I was wanting to shoot for when I do these shows, 45 minutes to an hour. Happy Labor Day, everyone. Have a great and safe holiday. Hope you enjoyed the show. And as always, you can leave comments, Facebook.com/TBGunslinger, Twitter @JohnRyanOut. You can tell me I suck and never do this again, or whatever you want to do. I'm more than happy to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. I'm looking at the comments and things like that. So if you guys ever have any observations and things you want to mention, or for me to talk about during a specific thing, don't hesitate. I might not be typing into that stuff because I'm doing this recorder at the same time. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to put everything to the side on the floor like this, but I'll see it and I'll talk about it as we go along. Appreciate it as always, guys. Talk to you soon. Have a good one. We'll talk to you next week. Appreciate it.